For centuries white supremacists have passed down their ideologies through art, family, and literature. White supremacists like Richard Spencer live by the same exact doctrines as their ancestors. They do not believe in morality or justice, only the will to power over others. The dystopian society you and I are living in is a result of the white man's views of good and evil. That is why we must be heartless in the face of evil.
A lot of the black culture is finding ways to cheat, finding ways to steal. It's definitely black culture that's the most degenerate. You guys literally have kids, and the father is never able to take care of your kids. Your whole culture is being degenerate, having kids and not taking care of them. Guns, drugs, like all kinds of degenerate shit is your whole culture. The black culture is the most criminality degenerate culture there has ever been. You guys literally commit all the crimes, all the bad crimes, the murders and the actual bad crimes. You guys commit, black people.
I stripped his clothes. I cut open his belly to see his guts. They're really pink. Sorry, that was morbid. Then I cut off his head. I gave him a Glasgow smile. What's that? A Joker smile.
The nature of white supremacist is brutality and deceit. These psychopathic behaviors can be traced all the way back to Europe where they started. I shared this clip to counter anti-black propaganda and to reveal some interesting facts about this demonic murderer.
The person you saw in the interrogation room is 19-year-old Brian Cohey. Believe it or not, Cohey was not explaining a movie or video game to the detective. He was telling the police officer how he killed a defenseless old man.
Because, I mean, Murray going to jail for the 15 years probably.
The fact that a grown man assumes he's only going to prison for 13 years reveals how whites are not properly punished for their heinous crimes. The young aspiring white supremacist understands this.
I have no idea.
Because
We're at the beginning.
it's murder. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck.
Okay.
He was panicking at first in his old man's voice. He was in his 50s. I know why I call him an old man. He was saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah!" And I just kept on stabbing his neck. Is this okay if I do a demonstration?
Oh, yeah.
This is him. I was straddled on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time I was growling and making animalistic noises.
Why were you doing that?
I suppose it was a frenzy.
Okay.
I was so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline and everything. Like,
Okay.
just, woo-hoo. Yeah. And then after that, I stripped his clothes. I cut open his belly to see his guts. They're really pink. Sorry, that was morbid. Then I cut off his head. I gave him a Glasgow smile.
What's that?
A Joker smile. I destroyed his eyes by stabbing them in.
Okay.
And then I cut off his hands. I put those in plastic Ziploc bags. And then I cut off his right arm at this joint
Okay.
and at this joint. And then at this arm, I tried cutting it here, and then I tried cutting it here. But what happened was, I accidentally broke his bone. This one, it was poking out.
Okay.
And so I left that one here, partially cut, dismembered here, bone sticking out. And then I left his body there.
You talked about you were just kind of in a bad space that night.
It was, yes.
Okay. Why were you in a bad space?
I didn't take my medicine, and plus for years I was wondering what murder would feel like, because you read shit like Ted Bundy and the Zodiac. They all say murder's the best feeling in the world. So I'm like, I'm going to try that.
And part of the shock and horror for my dear friends and family years ago when I was first arrested was that there was no clue. They looked at me and they looked at the All-American boy. They looked at me and they looked at the All-American boy.
Okay. So for some time I had been wondering when it would happen. I always knew I would be in this building, whether it was as a criminal or a police officer.
Okay.
Because I was planning to go in the military. I always knew I would be in this building, whether it was as a criminal or a police officer.
Okay.
Because I was planning to go in the military.
You could probably imagine the ancestors of this devil. But as you heard, he was an aspiring police officer. Sick evil abominations like him is typical among the police. This gives you better context on why anti-black police shootings occur. White supremacists blame DEI and stupidity, but this is a long festering issue of white supremacy. White supremacist nations was built off barbarism, wickedness, and embodies the idea of evil. For many centuries Europeans stole, killed, and destroyed. One of the ways they were able to keep this culture alive was by indoctrinating their children into this lifestyle, robbing them of their innocence, humanity, and turning them into monstrous beings.
A 15-year-old has been charged with several counts of murder after he was accused of shooting and killing 5 members of his family in Falls City and injuring another. According to the court documents, he then called police to claim that he was almost a victim himself. In a call to 911, the teen claimed he ran to a bathroom to escape gunfire, but as court documents show, his only surviving sister told police a very different story.
Investigators say a 911 call first came in from the 15-year-old just before 5 a.m. when he told dispatchers someone just shot his whole family. The teen then accused one of his deceased younger brothers of committing the crime, alleging he had done so because he'd been caught looking at pornography the night before. However, his sister was able to escape by playing dead after she was shot. The story she lived to tell contradicted his statements in a very dramatic fashion.
Physically, she's doing well, but I can't speak to her mental or emotional state.
Soccer coach and family friend Rhea Robertson was in tears this week after visiting the surviving sibling, the only one able to escape from the family's Lake Alice home after her 15-year-old brother is accused of trying to kill her.
Me and a couple of the parents went down and brought her some things just to say that we were there and that we loved her.
Court documents show that the young survivor was key in telling police what she witnessed Monday morning. She said she was asleep in her room with her 7-year-old sister Katie and woke up to gunfire. She says she could see her brother Joshua shot in the head and her dad Mark hit multiple times, laying in the hallway bleeding from the head and mouth. She says her younger sister Katie went out into the hallway and she heard another shot and saw her sister fall to the floor. Then she saw her brother enter her room, point a gun at her, and shoot once or twice. She thought that a single bullet hit both her hand and her neck and that she immediately felt pain. Then saw him leaning over the 3 bodies in the hall, touching their necks or chests to see if they were alive. She told police when he came back, she closed her eyes and held her breath and pretended to play dead as he stood next to her bed. He left and she escaped out a fire window.
She has a lot of family, and like I said, they're wonderful people, so she's got a lot of support.
The King County Medical Examiner's Office says the second oldest son, Ben, 13, was shot multiple times in the head. Investigators say their mom, 42-year-old Sarah Humiston, also died of multiple gunshot wounds to the head. Investigators said she was found in the bathroom with the door frame of the bathroom splintered as if it had been locked, then forced open.
I saw them as like the perfect family, so it's kind of shocking.
Police also said in court documents that they believe the teen staged the shooting in some way by placing a gun on or near his deceased brother's hand.
It has happened again. Mark Humiston and his family seem to have it all. Mark was an engineer and his wife a registered nurse. They had 5 children. Mark had moved his family from Texas to Washington State, where he worked as an electrical engineer for the Seattle-based consulting firm Hargis Engineers. In 2019, the Humistons bought a house in Falls City, a suburb 25 miles outside of Seattle. Actually, house is the completely wrong term for this place. It was a 4-story mansion on the lake. Literally. And speaking of life in Falls City, it only has a population of a little over 2,000 people, so you got McMansions in Mayberry. It was as perfect a vision of the American dream as the white media could have conjured, but this dream would turn into a complete nightmare. On Monday, the Kings County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call around 5 o'clock a.m. The caller said that his 13-year-old brother had just shot my whole family and committed suicide too at their home. The reason that he gave was that the 13-year-old had gotten in trouble for looking at pornography.
What kind of porn was he watching that made him feel the need to murder any witnesses? In these cultures, watching weird stuff on the internet is normal and is a part of the pathology of the teenagers and young adults. This new age of white supremacy might be the last due to the unknown long-term effects of white supremacist incel internet culture.
The caller was identified as a 15-year-old sibling, and the people he was reporting as dead were his father, Mark Humiston, and his mother, Sarah, along with 4 of his siblings, Benjamin, Joshua, Catherine, and a 4th one who had not been identified by the white media. Though at that same time as that call was coming in, 911 dispatchers were also receiving a second call, this time from a neighbor who lived about a quarter mile away. That neighbor said that an 11-year-old girl of the slain family had run to his house and was bleeding from what appeared to be a gunshot wound. The girl had said to the authorities her entire family had been fatally shot, but she identified her 15-year-old brother, Andrew Humiston, as the gunman. The girl told dispatchers Andrew had shot her and then described holding her breath and playing dead. The girl had later told detectives she had escaped through a bedroom window. She said that her father had kept a pistol in a small lockbox that he would sometimes put by the front door so he could bring it to work, according to documents. She told detectives that Andrew was the only one who knew the combination to the Glock lockbox. Investigators determined that Andrew systematically murdered his parents and siblings, and then, diabolically, he staged the scene prior to the arrival of first responders to try to make it appear that the murders had been committed by his dead brother. The court documents don't speculate on a motive, but the 11-year-old survivor told investigators that Andrew had recently gotten into trouble for failing tests at school, and that the handgun he used belonged to their father. Of all the children, she said, Andrew was the only one who knew the code to the lockbox that their dad kept the gun in. Now, what I find interesting is that the girl said her father would take his gun to work. This guy, Mark Humiston, worked as an electrical engineer, not a cop. Why would a man who's been described as both a software and electrical engineer, who lived in a tiny town, be packing heat to go work in Seattle if he's going to be behind a keyboard all day? This is a cultural issue that nobody dares talk about. And that goes for Andrew Humiston, too. Why did he feel that he had the right to slaughter his entire family? What thought process would make him think that that was the right thing to do? And then afterwards, why would he attempt to blame and frame one of his victims? This is a nauseating amount of evil at work here. Is it perhaps because he was socialized to believe that he could do no wrong? He's never been told no and could spend his entire life being psychologically coddled by the white media and physically pampered by society. Perhaps he had been conditioned to see everyone as being an abstraction except for himself. Only he is real, only his feelings matter, only his life matters. And do we see the same immorality in the society at large? Privilege plus gunpowder equals tragedy. The single biggest overall influencer of crime is poverty. You see, a lack of resources brings about a domino effect of all kinds of social dysfunction and aberrations. Now, with all the material resources monopolized by the dominant society, they should be the most happy, most well-adjusted, most peaceful, most law-abiding and non-violent sector of the society. They literally have nothing to be unhappy about. But instead, we see the opposite. This incident is a typical case study of that. You got a small town here, people living in a 4-story mansion in the middle of a little hamlet that most folks have never heard of, and they're living in a mansion on the lake. They got all the creature comforts you could ask for, nothing that would bring about dysfunction or even dissatisfaction. And yet, as I've chronicled for you time and time and time again, this is where these slaughters keep happening, and nobody wants to ask why, because to do so would be to indict the privileges and perks that society has given to certain people. You won't see any small-town white pastors asking why this keeps happening. No marches for peace in these hamlets. Meth is killing so many people from the dominant society, it's lowering their population numbers. And yet the white media doesn't get out the cameras and microphones and try to platform somebody from their community who'll get in front of the cameras and say, we've got to stop killing each other.